operational there with pilots.
Fear in their eyes as the aftershocks continue following a massive earthquake that has caused widespread damage across the country.
Kia ora, good evening from just north of Christchurch, where aftershocks continue to rattle nerves. Urgent assessments are still taking place tonight after a destructive earthquake caused extensive damage throughout the South and North Islands. 2 people have been killed, towns cut off and major roads destroyed. The 7.5 magnitude quake struck near Hanna Springs at a shallow depth of 15 kilometres just after midnight, and followed by nearly 400 aftershocks that we have felt here this afternoon and also across large parts of the country.
What the is going on?
Well, One News has extensive coverage of the quake throughout the news hour. Our reporters are standing by and we'll go live to them for the very latest shortly. We begin tonight with the worst affected area. Kaikoura, and Ali Pugh is there.
It's usually a picture postcard coastline, but today this iconic stretch of road was brought to a standstill. Massive slips, rocks and debris blocking the roads both north and south. Kaikoura is completely cut off.
Help and get me out. Yeah, it was hard. Sorry.
Do you want us to?
I was in the Christchurch ones and let's just put it all back.
The earthquake's impact can be seen right across the region.
This one was very violent. We're in a caravan and it shook it off its foundations.
Dozens of decent aftershocks also kept coming, one during this residents' briefing. Hundreds of tourists were also caught up in the chaos.
The earthquake last night was just so devastating and shocking. It knocked me out of bed. Things fell in the room that I was staying in. The hotel that I was staying in is now, condemned. I can't return.
Sewage systems are broken and power is still out.
The most important thing for us is making sure that visitors and residents have sanitary services. So obviously there's a lot of people still in town. We need to make sure that their sewage is disposed of cleanly.
One elderly man died here at the historic Elms homestead, and another was pulled from the rubble. The injured were flown to get medical attention. Further north at Bluff Station, this farm cottage was shaken from its foundations.
His bed would have been in this corner here, and before the earthquake happened, he would have rolled out and gone out the door here.
Built on a fault line, it felt the full force of this morning's powerful quake, and so too did the worker who lives here. He was in bed when it began shaking.
And he jumped out the door and onto the bank. We were standing here, and then the bank gave way, and so he took off across the paddock in his underwear.
This room's pretty trash.
Further up the road, we found another house tossed around and tipped over.
It just got worse and rolled and rattled and just kept on going.
This is very much still a region reeling, anxiety compounded by the fact that communications remain down in Kaikoura. So many Kiwi families will still be waiting to hear from loved ones.
So on the ground in Kaikoura, Ali Pugh, who joins us now live from the isolated town. Ali, a nervous night ahead for residents there.
It really will be a nervous night, Wendy. Of course, since that earthquake struck at 2 minutes past midnight, the earth here has really not stopped moving. More than 200 of the aftershocks that have been felt here have been over a magnitude 4. So people have been re-experiencing those really big jolts. Now, the tourists and visitors that are here and stuck now in Kaikoura, last night they were, of course, all staying on oceanfront campsites or oceanfront motels. Now they've all moved into higher ground where we are, this park where we're now standing. This has become a makeshift camp. Everyone's brought their caravans and camper vans and tents, as you can see behind me. They've also filled up the marae. Everyone's dossing down there, and we understand the Presbyterian Church is opening up its doors as well because there are so many people with nowhere to go. We really don't know, though, how long they're going to be here. They could be here for the long haul. Civil Defence says they really have no idea at this stage just how long it is going to take to clear State Highway north and south of here. It could be some days. We understand the Army is looking at bringing in helicopters to Kaikoura tomorrow to airlift out some of the people who desperately need to get out, although they really don't know how they're going to prioritise that list of people.
Well, it is such a difficult time there, Ali. What is the official advice for residents there?
Well, the official advice they're sticking with really is those key health safety messages, which is drink boiled water and to re-sanitise your hands. Of course, with the sewage out here, there are no toilets, so everyone here is using just a few portaloos around. So it really is sticking with the basic sanitation messages. And they're also reiterating that message to check on your neighbours. Of course, in the situation we're in right now in Kaikoura, with no power, phone lines or mobile reception, many people won't have been checked on by loved ones around the country. They just haven't been able to get through. So they're really just reiterating the message to check on your neighbours if you can.
Absolutely. All right, thanks, Ali Pugh. One News reporter Lisa Davies is also in Kaikoura and spent the day talking to quake residents.
There's a lot more troubling this Kaikoura couple than their damaged home.
The worst thing about it, I can't contact my family to tell them that we're fine, but they'll be watching and we want to tell them we love them.
Inside, more heartbreak, a real mess, but they haven't lost their sense of humour.
At least we can tell Kim that we had scrambled eggs.
Of course, some couldn't stay in their homes. Tsunami risk forcing hurried evacuations in Amberley.
You obviously left in a rush.
We did, yes. Very much so, dressing gown, Ugg boots. Not. I don't think it's, yeah, I think you just grab whatever you can, the dog and the kids, and you're gone.
Awake at midnight, people collapsing in exhaustion. But in Culverden, the work was waiting. A lot of it, despite the fright.
So it's broken the dinner set that your daughter wanted?
Yeah. She wanted that. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. All they want is for the shaking to stop. Lisa Davies, One News.
Well, a search is underway for a group of kayakers who are believed to have sought higher ground following a breach of a slip dam on the Clarence River inland from Kaikoura. Residents near the river and its floodplain are also being asked to evacuate to higher ground. Well, the Prime Minister says the earthquake clean-up costs will run into billions of dollars. John Key and Earthquake Recovery Minister Jerry Brownlee flew over damaged rail lines and blocked roads this afternoon in a Defence Force helicopter during the flight. Mr Key said the damage to Kaikoura was worse than he thought.
Some very short-term practical issues that need to be resolved, making sure that we get more water, food and ultimately people in here to support the nearly 600 people that are at the welfare centre.
MPs return to Parliament tomorrow to start planning for the recovery and the rebuild. Now, an update on all major roads just closed just north of here, starting from the top of the South Island. State Highway 1 from Picton to Blenheim, road closed and detours in place. Also from Blenheim to Kaikoura, extensive damage along this major stretch, the road closed all the way to the small town of Waipara. Heading inland on State Highway 7, the road closed from Waipara to Springs Junction. Officials have no idea yet when these roads will reopen because of the extent of the damage.
Well, the big quake and aftershocks also wreaked havoc in Wellington, where the jolts left the capital's CBD a ghost town today. Hundreds of people evacuated as tremors sparked fear and made buildings unsafe. Ryan Boswell has been out and about surveying the damage, and he joins us now live. Ryan.
Peter, I'm here on Featherston Street in Wellington CBD, where normally at this time of night there's plenty of hustle and bustle, people heading home from work or heading out to dinner. But today the quake turned our capital into a bit of a ghost town. This is the moment the capital was rocked, captured inside an inner city flat. Down the road, One News was there as Jack Richards went home to face the aftermath. His penthouse apartment turned upside down, the oven thrown from the wall, chairs tossed, and thousands of dollars worth of art ruined.
And things started falling down. So we tried to get to a doorway, and it was so violent then that I fell down. My partner got slightly injured, and it was just incredibly violent.
He moved out for the night, but his neighbours decided to stay put.
It was really scary, and I was crying the entire night.
This family of 6 bunking down in the lounge.
The whole bed just sort of jumped out from the wall, and these doors just literally buckled and just opened and swayed back and forth, back and forth.
Hundreds were evacuated from the city's high-rises and hotels, forced to huddle in the early hours. The quake shut many shops like the supermarket in Eastbourne. Wines and cans sent sprawling.
Shelves decided to empty themselves onto the floor, and staff and family and friends have all turned up to sort of help us tidy up.
Engineers spent the day surveying the normally bustling city centre. Buildings had crumbled and windows shattered. A chimney at the Fijian embassy collapsed onto the house next door, forcing the tenants out.
Fijian embassy had quite a tall chimney. It's bounced up in the air, dropped onto our kitchen. It's broken through the roof, but it hasn't, collapsed the kitchen completely.
The quake ripped roads open around parts of the coast and made Petoni's Wharf unsafe to use. Most of Wellington's buildings have been given the all clear, but some are still choosing to move out for now.
We won't be staying here because, as you can see, looking at the mess here, this is going to take a week to clean before it'll be habitable again.
Many braced for what's to come. Now, Wellington's Mayor Justin Lester says most of the CBD will be open tomorrow, except here on Featherston Street. There are still serious problems with masonry down this part of town, and so therefore many workers won't be able to come into this part of the city. Transport, though, for those who are coming in, should be up and running. Both buses and trains should be going by tomorrow morning, and it will be back to school for most kids. Parents are being told that they should check in with their kids' school to find out whether they're open tomorrow or not.
Ryan Boswell in Wellington tonight, thank you. Ferries remain stranded in Wellington's harbour after the bridge at the Inter-Islander terminal collapsed. Sailings were cancelled earlier today with the ferry unable to dock and unload passengers at Picton's port, which was also damaged during the quake, but no injuries were reported. Well, experts now believe there were actually 2 earthquakes just after midnight. The first at 12:02 a.m. near Culverden was a magnitude 7.5, a thrust motion quake. That's where one block of land is forced up over another. But this event triggered another moments later further north, a strike slip quake where land masses scrape against each other sideways. And this may explain why there have been major aftershocks in the 2 locations around Kaikoura and Seddon, some upwards of magnitude 5 and continuing right throughout the day. But there have also been significant tremors in the North Island. In Wellington that early morning at 4.9, causing extensive structural damage in the capital. But look at these. Shocks measuring above magnitude 4 as far away as Taihape, Paraparaumu and Taupo. The 7.5 shake is New Zealand's 3rd biggest in the last century. It surpassed only by a 7.8 in 2009 in an unpopulated part of Fiordland, and of course a quake of the same magnitude in Hawke's Bay in 1931. That's our deadliest natural disaster to date. Well, today's quake exposed some vulnerable areas in our infrastructure, especially transport links. Our political editor, Corin Dan, has been talking to those in power about what needs to be done, and Corin joins us now live. Corin.
Yes, I have spoken to the Prime Minister tonight, and I think the focus very much in the short term is on helping those who are stranded in Kaikoura. We are seeing now the frigate Canterbury involved in that, and I think you're going to see a much bigger response from the military in terms of helicopters getting people in and out and making sure food and water and key supplies are in there. So that will be the initial focus of the government, but clearly medium to long term they've got some huge issues. The size and scale of the slips and the road closures around that area are massive. They're going to take a huge amount of effort, and the government really does have its work cut out to make sure it can try and open up those key routes. With vital road, rail and sea links from Christchurch choked off, freight companies are now scrambling.
It's certainly been the worst since the Christchurch earthquake.
Kiwi Rail says it'll be 2 days at least before they can say when trains will start running along the east coast to Picton again. For the coastal road from Cheviot to Kaikoura, the outlook is also uncertain.
The slips on State Highway 1 are significant, so it could be days of weeks before we can really sort of get in there and start to clear those slips.
And consumers will pay.
These costs are significant, and freight is a significant proportion of all goods. It's 12-15% of the retail price of most goods is the freight component. So when you get a disruption like this, it does have an impact.
But it's not just on land where the quake has highlighted transport vulnerabilities. Cook Strait ferries also aren't going anywhere fast because of port damage in Picton and Wellington.
We'll be taking road traffic over the Cook Strait as far as Picton. At this stage, we're not taking any more freight traffic. We are, as we speak, working with coastal ship operators to see how we can move some of that freight.
The Finance Minister's aware of the challenges this quake's exposed.
The National Land Transport Fund has a contingency fund for earthquakes because we get them pretty regularly. But even if that runs out, we can fund it from the general budget.
And a 6.3 aftershock mid-interview in his Beehive office was a reminder that the emergency's far from over.
An earthquake like we're having right now.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we've got used to it, haven't we? It's still going. It's big.
Man. Now that really rolls around up here, doesn't it? Bill English says the government will learn from the shortcomings this quake's unearthed.
It's really just a matter of how much you're willing and able to invest to try and secure reliability of the transport links. This earthquake means we're probably going to have to invest a bit more and try a bit harder to get the reliability.
But he's confident the economy won't be knocked off course by this latest earthquake.
So, Corin, what's the approach the government's going to take from here?
Yeah, well, look, as we said, that short-term emergency response, but there is a confidence issue here as well around things like insurance. And the government's been quick today to reiterate that it has the money, that EQC has the money, that its books are in strong shape. And John Key's now saying this could be running into the billions of dollars given the scale of this issue. So that is an important thing. And certainly markets would appear to have that confidence as well. The New Zealand dollar, while it is down slightly, it has not fallen away. And the NZX 52 has held up pretty well. So markets certainly haven't been rattled by this as if it's going to dramatically hurt the economy. Tourism will be a factor, and you'd have to think that longer term there may have to be some help for tourism operators in Kaikoura because that is a massive part of the economy there. And then, as we said, longer term, I think there's got to be more thinking about how to safeguard those key transport routes up the South Island.
Corin Dan from Wellington, thank you. And adding to concerns, a big storm is set to batter those regions affected by the earthquake. For what you need to know, let's go to One News meteorologist Dan Corbett. More bad news, eh?
Yes. Poorly timed, to say the least. Mother Nature didn't get the memo on this one. This is what we're looking at. This is the leading edge of the rain, the colour there. And it's this pipeline of cloud going all the way back to the Tasman Sea. Good lump of cloud, rain and strong, potentially damaging winds. There are quite a few watches and warnings, but put your eyes to Cook Strait. From Marlborough towards Wellington and Wairarapa, wind gusts potentially damaging to 140 kilometres per hour. But on the edges, we could see winds up to 100 to 120 from Canterbury, all the way north to the Central Plateau, Kaikoura, all these places. On top of that, northwest-facing slopes of that central part of New Zealand could see rain in excess of 100 millimetres by the time this thing works in. There it is now. That's the pipeline of rain. As the high and the low squeeze together with the isobars, that, of course, brings our strong, potentially damaging winds, peaking around midnight to the early hours through parts of Cook Strait. You can see that piling its way in, and as we run our way through the course of the night, very heavy rain. This slowly eases back through the course of the morning as the main front shifts north, but it's going to be a wet, windy night. Of course, that slowly works through. Still some blustery showers. And, of course, next couple of days, still some blustery weather to contend with. So batten down the hatches, of course, if you can. That's how it's looking for now. Now back to Wendy.
Thanks, Daniel. There's been a spate of aftershocks that have rolled through the middle of the country today. Earthquake engineer Ken Elwood explains what that could all mean.
So for the time being, it seems that it's following that normal trend and dropping off. you know, as of course, but it's very early days in terms of marking that trend and seeing how it follows past events. It'll take a couple of days for us to see that it truly is following the past trends. But for the time being, we're seeing that all of the aftershock activity that we're seeing is normal.
All right, for those of you in affected areas, here is some official advice. Stay off beaches and out of the water, even though tsunami warnings have been downgraded. Schools from North Canterbury to Wellington closed until buildings are assessed. Check with your local school about tomorrow. All trains in the North Island, south of Palmerston North and in the South Island cancelled until further notice. Wellingtonians warned to stay away from the central city because of danger from damaged buildings. And check social media and news reports for updates, and make sure to share this information with family and neighbours.